Let's jump right into this explainer, shall we? Today, we're looking at game theory and how it literally uncovers the hidden mathematical mechanics behind our everyday decision making. Now, you hear the word game, and you probably picture, a board game or a sport being played on a field. But as you're about to see, life itself operates on very similar, highly predictable principles. It's like a giant puzzle, and we're all playing. So, here's our agenda for today. First, we'll look at how life is a game. Then, we'll break down the famous prisoner's dilemma and explore the Nash equilibrium. After that, we'll look at some high-stakes scenarios in business, bets, and Jeopardy. Dive into the human element, and finally wrap up with strategies for winning your everyday games. Let's get to it! Kicking things off with Section 1, Life is a Game, the hidden strategies all around us. So almost every interaction you have involves rules, teammates, opponents, and strategies. You might not even realize you're sitting at a game board, but the pieces are constantly in motion. Take a gridlock commute, for example. You're sitting in traffic on your way to work wondering, why does this happen every single day? Well, game theory has the answer. It's because your morning commute isn't just a drive. It's this massive multiplayer game where everyone is just trying to maximize their own personal benefit. Or think about sitting right across from your boss, negotiating your salary. You're actively trying to anticipate their next move, right? You're figuring out exactly how much information to share without completely weakening your own bargaining position. Make no mistake, that is a strategic game. It even applies to deciding who takes out the trash. Splitting household chores can so easily become this high-stakes game of chicken with your roommates. Everyone is strategically pretending they don't see the overflowing bin, just waiting to see who caves first. We've all been there. So, what exactly is game theory? Basically, it's the mathematical study of strategic decision-making where your outcome, or your payout, depends directly on the choices of other players. It assumes that players are rational decision-makers who are actively trying to maximize their benefits and minimize their losses based on what everyone else does. Moving right along to Section 2, the prisoner's dilemma: to cooperate or to defect? This brings us to the most famous scenario in all of game theory. It perfectly illustrates this massive tension between individual and collective rationality. Imagine two burglars get arrested. The police place them in separate interrogation rooms without any way to communicate and offer them a deal: either confess to the crime or remain silent. They have a huge choice to make, and their payout depends entirely on what the other person decides to do. Now check out this payout matrix. Even though staying silent is absolutely the best collective outcome, giving them just 1 year in jail each, the individual temptation to confess and walk away with 0 years is overwhelming. Think about it. If prisoner A stays silent but prisoner B confesses, prisoner A gets hit with 20 years. Because they can't communicate, that fear drives both of them to betray each other, which results in 5 years for both. By acting in their own rational self-interest, they literally guarantee a way worse overall outcome. Crazy, right? Next up, Section 3, the Nash equilibrium: settling into strategy. This natural gravity toward a less than ideal outcome leads us right to a groundbreaking concept developed by the brilliant mathematician John Nash back in the 1950s. He expanded game theory to prove that in interactions with multiple players, everyone eventually settles into a strategy where they are doing the very best they can given what everyone else is doing. Once that exact point is reached, it's called a Nash equilibrium because no single player has any incentive to change their strategy unless the other players change theirs first. And this actually perfectly illustrates our traffic question from earlier. In a truly ideal commute, if we all somehow coordinated and took different alternate routes, traffic would practically vanish. But we don't do that because we all rationally and selfishly pull up our GPS and pick the absolute fastest route independently. We reach a Nash equilibrium. We collectively create the massive gridlock that slows every single one of us down. All right, let's look at Section 4, business, bets, and Jeopardy: high-stakes games. Let's see how these theories scale up when the board gets way bigger and the stakes get much higher. In a free market, tobacco companies were trapped in this endless cycle of spending millions on TV ads just to cancel out their competitors' ads. It was a classic prisoner's dilemma on a massive scale. But in the 1970s, the US government completely banned TV ads for tobacco. By essentially forcing the companies to cooperate and not advertise, the ban actually handed them a massive win. Their profits surged because they suddenly saved all that ad money. We can also look at James Holzhauer. If you watch Jeopardy, you know he famously used his math and professional gambling background to completely break the game show. He treated the trivia show as a highly aggressive game theory model. He would select high-value questions first, strategically hunt for the daily doubles hidden on the board, and then wager massive amounts, averaging like $9,000, to mathematically lock out his opponents. Understanding the underlying game netted him over $2.4 million. Game theory also shows us exactly how to act when we are completely outmatched. In a zero-sum conflict known as the shooting game, mathematical modeling proves that if you are the weaker player, maybe you're just at the bottom of the corporate ladder, your absolute best strategy is to take radical risks early. Why? Because you literally have nothing to lose. If you try something drastically different and fail, well, you just stay at the bottom. But if you succeed, you completely change the whole dynamic of the game. Moving on to Section 5, the human element. Are we always rational? Now, before we go thinking we've completely solved human behavior with some elegant math, we have to look at the unpredictable variables that math really struggles to capture. We have to talk about the human element. As the mathematician Anatole Rappaport noted, while the math provides a perfect structural model for conflict, humans are notoriously irrational, and real life rarely goes exactly to plan. At the end of the day, we aren't just cold, calculating computers. Game theory assumes players are purely logical, right? But in reality, we are constrained by something called bounded rationality. This just means our biases, our lack of perfect information, and our limited mental energy cause us to make flawed choices. We simply don't always have the time or the brainpower in a given moment to calculate the mathematically perfect move. Plus, traditional game theory models rely entirely on self-interest. But human beings often choose altruism. We actually routinely prioritize the welfare of others over our own optimal payout. You might take on extra work in a group project just to help out a stressed friend, completely throwing off the mathematical expectation of a free rider. It happens all the time. And that brings us to our final section, Section 6, Winning Your Everyday Games, Strategies for Daily Life. Okay, so how do we take all of this theory and build it into an actionable playbook you can use starting today? First, you need to identify the game you're in. Is this a cooperative or a competitive situation? Next, deeply understand your opponents. What are their goals, motivations, and weaknesses? Then, analyze the strategies. Map out their potential future moves and evaluate the payoffs. And finally, perhaps the absolute most important rule, communicate. As we saw back in The Prisoner's Dilemma, silence breeds betrayal. Break that cycle and over-communicate to establish trust and ensure everybody finds a winning outcome. So, whether you are haggling over a price, navigating rush hour traffic, or deciding to take a massive risk at work, the board is set and the pieces are moving. Now that you know the hidden mathematical rules governing human behavior, what's your next move going to be?